Alright, so I know what you're thinking. The Great War, it was mostly a European thing. European countries fighting each other, their colonies fighting each other. How does the United States get itself involved in this? Well, stick around because that's what we're going to talk about today in Mr. E's classroom. Hey ladies and gentlemen, Mr. E here. So we've been talking about the Great War. And for the most part, it's a European thing. It's the major European powers fighting against each other, their territories fighting against each other, and the United States is just kind of over by its lonesome. So how do we actually get ourselves involved? Remember, initially we wanted to be neutral and make money off of both sides. That's what we're going to look at today in Mr. E's classroom. Specifically, we're going to try to answer the question, how did the United States go from being a neutral country to eventually siding with the Triple Entente? So get your pencil and paper ready, take some great notes, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll have a good answer for that. So right from the get-go, the United States remained neutral in this war. One of the main reasons for doing this is America saw the war as being very profitable. It was easy for the United States to be able to make lots of money by selling war goods to both sides. If they were neutral, if they didn't pick a side, they could play both sides and make money from both sides. In fact, President Wilson from the beginning called for Americans to be impartial in thought as well as action. Basically, Wilson was trying to calm everybody down and tell America, hey, if we just take it easy, this war could benefit us. Even though President Wilson really pushed this neutrality or this impartiality when it came to the war, there were still a lot of divided loyalties here in the United States. Most of the natural-born citizens still supported the British and the French because that's where they traced a lot of their ancestry to. And on top of that, about a third of Americans that were foreign-born that had come and immigrated to the United States right around this time still had a lot of ties back to their homeland. They wanted to see their country do well in the war. As this war starts to play out, you see really three distinct opinions start to form about it. The first opinion is going to be the isolationist. These are the people that thought the war was absolutely none of our business. We should stay out of it. We should just make money by selling to both sides. And, you know, that's a European thing. It's happening over there in Europe. We'll just stay over here on our side of the Atlantic and just kind of reap the rewards. The second opinion that formed were the interventionists. These were the people that said, no, we need to go fight. We need to join a side and we need to go fight. And in that group, the interventionists, it was actually kind of divided between who wanted to join the Triple Alliance and who wanted to join the Triple Entente because citizens really had connections to both sides. Then you had a group called the internationalists. These people thought that the United States should get involved in this war, but we should do so without fighting. We shouldn't go join a side. We should go and actively help try to find a peaceful solution to what was going on. Of those three opinions, Wilson was very much an internationalist. He saw the need for the United States to step in and try to help come up with a peaceful solution. Unfortunately, most Americans were kind of turning into interventionists. America slowly started to kind of change their mindset and said, hey, yeah, this war is profitable for us, but we need to pick a side. We need to go fight. One thing that really helped to kind of change this opinion, to kind of drive Americans towards that interventionist idea, was what was happening to our profit margin, basically. There started to be a lot of interference with what was happening to the supplies that we were sending to both sides. That was ultimately cutting into the profit the United States was making. One way this was happening was through British blockades. The British used their Navy to basically keep any kind of war-related good out of Triple Alliance hands. Under international law, they were allowed to keep whatever they took. So essentially what was happening is the stuff the United States started sending to the Triple Alliance was getting snatched up by the British, and we weren't getting paid for it. The upside was they really didn't hurt any of our sailors or our ships. That was kind of a big thing. On the flip side, instead of using that blockade tactic, the Germans decided to get kind of ugly with their U-boats or their submarines. Germans started sinking supply ships that were headed to the Triple Entente. This included a lot of American ships. Not only did we lose out on the profit we would make from the war goods we were trying to sell, all of a sudden we were losing ships too. And on top of that, we were losing sailors. This kind of came to a head on May 7th, 1915. The Germans sank a cruise ship called the Lusitania. Now, the Lusitania wasn't an American ship, but there were 128 American passengers on that ship, as well as some war supplies. There weren't supposed to be, but they were there. There was a huge outcry after the sinking of the Lusitania. Americans basically went to Germany and said, "How dare you sink this ship and kill all of our citizens?" As a kind of a concession to this, the Germans said, okay, we might have gone a little crazy there sinking a cruise ship. We won't do it again. Unfortunately, about a year later, on May 4th, 1916, they do the exact same thing and sink another ship called the Sussex. This really kind of turned the tide of opinion against the Germans here in the United States. After May 4th, 1916, most Americans were starting to say, hey, we need to join this war, and we need to join on the side of the Triple Entente. Congress and President Wilson kind of saw the writing on the wall. In June 1916, two major bills get passed in Congress to kind of help prepare us for war. One was the National Defense Act. This was designed to basically help us build up our military. Before 1916, the United States had kind of a really tiny army. Now, it was still a pretty good army. We had some pretty advanced technology. We just didn't have a very big army. It was about 500,000 soldiers strong. This was nothing compared to the militaries of Europe. The other bill that got passed was the Naval Construction Act. This basically allowed the Navy to start building more ships, some big giant battleships, as well as some smaller ships. Again, our Navy kind of paled in comparison size-wise to what the European navies had. The last straw that kind of broke the back of American neutrality happened in January of 1917. The British intercepted a telegram from Germany to Mexico that has been called the Zimmermann Note. We'll discuss the Zimmermann Note a little bit more in class, but here's the gist of it. The Germans really feared the United States entering the war against them. They thought the best plan would be if they went to Mexico and got Mexico involved in the war. Basically, the telegram said, hey Mexico, why don't you declare war on the United States? We'll support you. We'll give you all the stuff you need to fight. If you do that, you keep the United States busy and off of our backs. When we finally win this war in Europe, we'll come help you out and we'll help you get back all that land you've lost to the United States over the years. This did not set well with the American public. What happened is they actually published this letter in newspapers all over the country. Americans, they really said, hey, this is just plain rotten and mean. We need to join the war, and we need to join on the side of the Triple Entente. We need to show those Germans who's boss. By April of 1917, it was almost a done deal that the United States was going to join in the war, and we were going to help whip the Germans. In fact, President Wilson made a big speech to Congress asking for a declaration of war. In that speech, here's what he said to kind of justify the United States entering this war. He said, "The world must be made safe for democracy. Its peace must be planted upon the tested foundations of political liberty. We are but one of the champions of the rights of mankind. We shall be satisfied when those rights have been made as secure as the faith and freedom of nations can make it." Basically what Wilson is saying is, we don't need to do this because we're angry at the Germans. We need to do this because we need to show the rest of the world the right way to do government. Well, what Wilson said really made sense to Congress. They mulled it over for a few days, and finally on April 6, 1917, in almost a unanimous decision, Congress obliges Wilson and gives the American people what they're looking for, and war is finally declared on Germany.
the United States has officially entered the Great War.
So now you know exactly how the United States went from being a neutral country to siding with the Triple Entente. What do we need to take away from this? Well, number one is this. Remember that early on, the United States really wanted to stay neutral. Neutrality meant profits. We could make some money by basically playing both sides. Number two, it was incredibly difficult for us to remain neutral, especially when the two sides we were doing business with were fighting each other. And it's really hard to do business when those sides start attacking your ships. And number three, remember that it was the Zimmermann Note that really was kind of the last straw for Germany. And that's kind of what put the United States against the Triple Alliance. Alright guys, hopefully you got good notes and are going to be ready for a quiz when it happens. As always, until next time, remember, don't stop learning.